I'm back. It's a big deal.
Welcome back to Average Age Groupers, and Laura is here this time.
Yes. That is the unfortunate part of my career is I work weekends and recording during the week sometimes doesn't work. So if I'm MIA, it's probably because I'm at work. Here we are on Average Age Groupers.
Great. Yeah.
I'm Laura.
I'm Holly.
I'm Maggie.
We don't have like an official tagline opener, but last week Maggie kind of hinted at it. Our purpose here is to tell average age grouper stories. That is why we exist. And also maybe, some age grouper perspective on things related to endurance sports like nutrition or training or rest or
existing.
Balance. Yeah.
I had that literal
How to
moment.
Fit it all in a normal life.
Last night, I left work and I was like, I texted my friend Bridget. I was like, I don't think I could physically have run last night. And she's like, yeah, your body needs rest. And I was like, yeah, but I'm having all these feelings about not doing something. She's like, you're doing something. And then the next text, she's like, resting. And I just like sent the like annoyed face. And she was like, yeah, I knew that was coming. I was like, yeah. So sometimes we need to rest, even when we don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
What are we talking about this week?
Should we do your Ironman stories? I feel like time.
I was like, God, that was the plan. I told Laura that. I was like, I intentionally wore an Ironman Wisconsin sweatshirt.
And I was like, I was like, I hope she doesn't have that sweatshirt on. She's like, we're talking about Wisconsin. And I was like, oh.
Are you ready?
I mean, sure.
Sure.
We can do that.
I think it's a good topic. There are so many stories from this, so.
Yes. And I think it's like a fun lead in because I do feel like this is kind of about the time when like you're ramping up to either doing a half or something, before the full. Like this is kind of where I don't want to say like you lock in, but like it becomes real about this time. Like you're outside biking, you're probably getting into the open water soon. So
depending on where you live. I mean, if you live in Florida or Texas, you might have already done an Ironman because your weather's different than ours here.
You guys, my bike bag just got delivered.
Yay! What kind of bike bag did you get?
A Cycon? It was on it was so on sale. I literally couldn't not get it. I texted Logan and I was like, there's this bike bag. And he's like, I sent it to him. He's like, you have to buy that. And I was like, crap. But so now I have my bike bag.
Incredible. I love it. Now you're ready for California.
Partially, yeah. I did sign up for the race. I did so much. So I wasn't on Average Age Groupers last weekend, but I bought a bike bag and I signed up for the race. So there we go.
Check. Things
we have an
done
Airbnb
off the list.
I do still need to buy my flights. I just wasn't ready to make that full jump all in one weekend. So yeah. Okay. How should we break down Ironman Wisconsin?
All right. So I think we should maybe talk about it from the standpoint of I think our Ironman is a little different than Maggie, your initial, right? Because you just like signed up to do this by yourself, did an Ironman. Very commendable. Mm-hmm. For me personally, and 2 weeks ago when my story came out, you'll have heard like all the different half Ironmans I did before getting to Ironman. But it took 7 halves for me to believe that I could double that distance. Like within my own head, I was like, every time I would finish a half, I would be like, could I do that again? No. And it took 7 halves for me to like wrap my brain around twice the distance. So that was like a key thing for me also.
I only needed my friends to apparently believe in me.
Perfect.
Yeah. Because I
do feel like
only done 2, Wisconsin and North Carolina. Because I had done Musselman as the third, but like, I don't know. I didn't really, mentally, I don't count that as
I guess
completed.
Yeah, technically, I think I probably had done 6, and then Musselman was the 7th before I did Ironman. But it took 6 for me to make the decision that I could do it twice. So,
just need your friends to believe in you, apparently.
Yeah,
I do feel like we need to start with some of training and lead into the race, like how that went for both of you.
We have very different training stories and very different races. Also, I think overall. But I think for me, we signed up a full year ahead of 2024. I think I registered in the priority window or whatever. For those of you that are familiar, if you do enough Ironman events, they give you like early access to some races.
It's not any cheaper. You just sign up earlier.
You just sign up earlier. I was on a work trip when I signed up. I do remember that. So this would have been, the fall of 20. And we were texting about it. We both end up signing up in that window. And I think for me, I was just like, well, I've got this base built. I'm not super concerned about it. But it was in late December. No, I take that back. Was it late December? I think it was late December. I started kind of doing like a base building kind of training plan. It's like on the Peloton, some runs. I was in Masters swim and was like religious about Masters swim at that time. That was sort of like the beginning of training in the winter. What would you add about the winter?
I mean, I feel like we were consistently indoor riding.
Yes.
Like starting January. Because you have to make that build. And unfortunately in Wisconsin, most of it, the starting stages are inside. So I do just like remember spending so much time inside on our bikes.
I also did Boulder that year before Musselman.
Mm-hmm.
So I had been building into Boulder. What was interesting also is that we started that Ironman build part of a different training group. So there was like a lot of transition also that happened in that like first half of the training block to Ironman. But we were doing a lot of like, we were riding every Saturday long ride. We were long running Sunday. We did the full build up to Musselman, which Musselman was, I think, great timing for lead up to Ironman Wisconsin. It's like mid-July timeframe. We met you out there. That was after you had moved to DC. We had a pretty large group from, locally here around Madison that went. That is a beautiful bike course in Musselman. Loved the bike course. Swim was fine. It was clear. It was warm. It was clear in a lake. Nothing to like write home about.
I'd be fine with never doing that run again in my life.
The run was pretty awful. It was hot. It was not a lot of shade. It was so
some
humid.
major hills.
Yeah.
Major hills.
Yeah.
But it was like, it was a good...
It was the appropriate
like middle point.
And the appropriate race for Wisconsin in terms of
correct
type of course, type of swim, even the run. I mean, that was an appropriate run in terms of like, there's some elevation in the Wisconsin course. And so I felt pretty good about that. I had my PR bike split in Musselman for a 70.3. So I think it was after Musselman though. That's like when shit gets real training for Ironman. Like that you make it up to mid-July, you still have like a life, right? Like the bikes are all like maybe 3-4 hours tops, runs like 10-11 miles. The swims are still all staying in that like 2,000 yard kind of thing. So it like feels very like no big deal.
Correct.
I shouldn't say it that way.
If you've
trained for a half, it feels like no big deal up to that point. Like this just is normal. This is what we do.
But yeah, post Musselman is when then everything you're biking, for sure biking is like a new max distance that you've biked. Running, not necessarily because we both ran marathons, but it also feels very different. Like I feel like the long runs on Sundays were pretty tough for me mentally. And no, my foot was fine. I'm trying to remember.
I can't
remember. Tell me you've like blocked out parts of this.
I think your foot was fine, but not to like reveal parts of your story, but at what point did you start hating the bike?
Oh God. I feel like I was having major issues with nutrition. That was a big thing. I changed my nutrition post Musselman because I was having like, I would hit mile like 60 or 70 and just fall apart. Definition of bonk would happen. And I was pretty uncomfortable on my bike. So the front end of my bike was on a pretty aggressive aero. I would spend more time in my drops than I would in aero, which isn't always the best and sometimes is uncomfortable on a TT bike. Oh, I feel like pretty closely after Musselman, I was hating every bike ride. To just like put it how it was. Like I was not having fun. And two, with my job, so I would have to be strategically planning my schedule and then having to sometimes do these like 70, 80-mile bike rides by myself, or like I'd start a bike ride and then like I'd come to Holly's, do like 30 miles, and then everyone else would have their like hour bike ride, and I'd be like,
we had left. Yeah.
I'm slowly dying because I've already gone so far. So
Well, I
that
think
part is tricky too, of like,
towards the biggest weekends, we managed to do most of them together. And sometimes there was one weekend where I had to go to my grandma's funeral actually. And so we biked on Friday. And I think that one was like 75 or 80 or something
Yeah.
like that. So I took off of work so that I could get this bike ride done and then drive to the funeral. So there's like a lot of kind of those sort of things also where you kind of like negotiate into your life. So if you've never done an Ironman, like you start to be like, well, I have to prioritize the long bike and the long run. If something else has to fall off, okay, but I have to do these two things. So then you're like rearranging your life to make sure you don't miss those parts of the training. The other thing I was going to say about where we trained differently is I think it was in March of 24, I hired a local coach here because I decided like I wanted, while I had been self-coaching prior and I'd been using like the Zone 2 book, and I did Boulder twice doing that plan. I did North Carolina doing that plan, and I had tons of success doing that plan and sort of self-coaching. I decided for Ironman, similar to what I said about Unbound, like I decided I wanted a coach. I wanted somebody who was going to like help me not mess it up. Help me like, and also be like a sounding board of like, well, this doesn't feel good. Do I push through or do I pull back? Because I know myself well enough to know when I'm self-coaching, I will hold myself accountable to finish it, even if it's maybe not the best idea to do it. And so I'll be like, well, that workout's on the plan. I'm going to do it. And sometimes maybe I'm going too far or overtraining or not respecting the boundary of my own limitations. And so I knew I needed somebody who was going to be like, hey, if that hurts, if this is bothering you, we're going to scale back, or we're going to change that workout, or we're going to do something different. And so that was an important piece for me, to just have that sounding board for an event that was that big. Would I hire a coach to do Ironman again now that I've done one and I know? Maybe not. I mean, I'd stay with Anne, but I don't know if I'd go and hire like a triathlon specific coach again. He was very expensive.
and I think that's like, there is a big part of this too, that like doing this is expensive. Like there's so many little things you don't realize that you end up paying for in the end, that you're like, oh wow, okay. And so like for me, like I have the lovely ability to pick up an extra shift to make money, but you can't necessarily do that while you're training for an Ironman, like, because it's also that handoff of like, well, what am I going to give up? Because I work 12-hour days. So there's that just little tidbit of like, if you could probably do it on a strict budget, but it's hard because things pop up. I mean, not in regards to, well, I did have a very expensive tune-up that popped up for Ironman, but like when we raced North Carolina, I got a gash in my tire and had to like buy a new tire the day before the race. Like, yeah, $175 tire is not huge in the grand scheme, but like it could be to somebody. So there's that sidebar.
I think the other thing when I think about that 2024 year in terms of the build for Ironman was super special. And we haven't had a year, well, I know this was only 2 years ago, but like we haven't had kind of a group that came together like that group since then. And I think prior to that, not that we did Ironman, but I think prior to that, in terms of experiencing like community and group, 2021 was probably the year prior to that that felt the most similar, where everybody kind of came together to do it. And that was like post COVID, and everybody wanted to race, and it was kind of a different feeling than this was. But yes, there was all the long weekends. Yes, there was all the training. But I think the more important thing was like there was this kind of core group of people that kept showing up to do the training together, even though we weren't necessarily all the same pace or anything like that. And we're like watching out for each other and trying to solution different problems while we were out there for each other. I think like that is as important or even more important in terms of, at least for me and my story of Wisconsin, than the training. Like the training and the coach and the whatever, that was all like what I needed it to be. But the community aspect of it, I think, is what actually made getting it done possible.
I mean, it's like the people that one you do it with is also so special. And then like the people that show up for all of the things while you're doing it too. I mean, we'll talk about the worst bike ride of my life was one weekend that like Maggie's like, I need to be in town for this training because it's your biggest weekend. Like I want to be there. And so, yeah, the people that were there, and like we'll even talk about on Ironman Day too, like we did this really important race in this huge goal, but a lot of it is the people that were around you for it.
I think that's the most amazing part of your Ironman experience for both of you. You had a really good group of people, and I hope that other people can experience that at some point when they do a race, because it created this energy that I think, I mean, I wasn't racing, but I think if I had been racing, it would have made the race feel extra special, and even more so like I could do this really big thing that I had never done before.
The community aspect of it was like, while there was like a transition in terms of groups and organization or whatever, it was that started to become like a reality shortly after Boulder. And that transition was part of it, because one of the things that happened in that transition was that we eliminated a whole bunch of drama. There was like a different kind of drama. There was like other shit to deal with because we're human beings in community. But we eliminated this, which I think also changed like the emotional atmosphere around the race. And that was important. There were pieces of that were hangover. We don't need to get into that. That's not the point. I also think that was like it was fun because we were like doing this big goal, but we were also building our own community as we were working towards this goal. I think that definitely had an impact. The weekend we did our longest ride, we partnered with Waterfall, who we mentioned on a previous episode, and they sponsored this ride for us where they provided like nutrition and things like that, and we did like a I don't want to say a simulation day, but it was like the longest bike day in the build to Ironman. And many people turned out for that. So many. We have not been able to replicate that event yet again, but that was just very cool, right? So as people came from all over the country that were part of Waterfall, and like people from Minnesota, people saw the event online and like showed up in the parking lot that morning and went off with us, and people who participated in other kind of local teams were there. And there's this guy, Dan, who has been doing Ironman events for
Years?
like 30 years, a very long time.
Very long time.
And like he rode on the bike with us, and at one point like we're in the wind and he's like pulling us up the road and like leading the whole charge, and people brought scooters and like manned tents and drove SAG cars, right? And so it was just like that was very cool and super special. And if I had to pick like a memory outside of actually doing the race that was like that it was that day, I think was the most special sort of day in terms of the build. And I hope that we're able to like recreate something like that in the future for other people to experience. You know, I don't know when that will be, but yeah.
Because I drove back for that ride. I mean, at that point, Laura, you had been having a hard time with the bike, and I was fully remote in my job, and I wanted to be there to support you guys for your longest training weekend. And so I drove back to Wisconsin with all my tri stuff, and I was there for that day. And I mean, it was amazing how many people turned up and stayed around, did whatever they needed to do, 50 miles, 60 miles, but then they would be driving around for the other people. They would go stop where we had tents set up. It was a really cool day.
I mean, that was probably, outside of my Ironman bike, probably one of the hardest bikes I've done. But also it was like, everyone was there. Like, I just was in my head, like, get to the next place where people are. And you just keep like checking off the miles. I did have a breakdown. I also,
in a cemetery.
I didn't realize it was in a cemetery until Maggie like reminded me of that like a couple months ago. She's like, "Did you realize we were right by the cemetery?" And I was like, "Absolutely not."
Like literally in the cemetery. We were like, where can we pull off? Oh, right here.
Cemetery.
That's a driveway.
And it was one of those, like, this is something I think all of us do as endurance athletes. When you are starting to break down, your first thing is to tell all of your friends to just go.
Oh yeah, she like
also,
yelled at me.
There's also that moment where you're like, like, you know, you're going to have like an emotional breakdown. And so too, you're like, I don't want anyone around to witness this.
I mean, that we can unpack that some other time about like the allowing yourself to be vulnerable in front of your friends. It's not a bad thing, but that's like for a whole other podcast.
Different story. But that's like, because it's happened. Like, I mean, Bridget's done it too, where she's like, leave. And I'm like, well, it's just you and I'm on my bicycle while you're running, so I'm not going anywhere. But like, the first thing is to be like, please go away. So like, sent my friends off as I'm climbing into Mount Horeb. And Maggie and Nick and Aaron are like pulled over in the cemetery, and I lose my shit. Like, sobbing, questioning every choice of like, can I do this? And I think your body is pretty exhausted at this point. Like, you're building up to one of the hardest weekends. And so yeah, it was just a full breakdown. I drank some Coke because the one thing you learn in Ironman is Coca-Cola saves lives. We're not sponsored. I wish we could be. So drank some Coke, and then it was just like checking off, like, okay, get to the next spot. I mean, that was like the first time we hit a century ride. So that too is like a very pivotal part of Ironman training, when you hit that 100-mile ride. I mean, it's interesting that you can have a weekend that is like had so many lows, but also was such a good training weekend.
Yeah.
And like, I remember too, Sunday running. And I think in your brain you have like, oh, you have to hit this like mileage or time. And the run, I remember that run wasn't terrible, but like, we got back to the car at one point and Holly was like, you could be done. And I was like, okay. Like, it took zero convincing to be like, you can stop now. And I think I only hit 17 was the max I ran. And I don't think running any farther would have changed my Ironman run, honestly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There's also that like line and like learning that too. Like, 1 mile here isn't going to make a difference 3 weeks from now.
And I remember I remember being at the car and like, I was happy with the run. And so it was also too one of those where I'm like, I want to be done right now. Yeah. And like, not make this feel terrible and remember it as being terrible.
I don't remember a whole ton from the runs in the build to Ironman. actually. Like I don't know if I've like blacked them out or there just wasn't anything significant. There are specific bikes I remember, the runs. Also, we've run kind of the Ironman run course
So
so
many
much
times.
that like they kind of all start to seem like the same. And I would do things like if you're from the Madison area, you might be familiar with Picnic Point, and I would do things like I don't want to run the freaking I'm going to run into Picnic Point and do part of it in there and like just try to like get to my total time and not just run the Ironman loop over and over and over and over again.
A very interesting thing for me is I run the Lakeshore Path. That is where I run after work, if I run after work. And so also I run the Lakeshore Path an ungodly amount of times, but like I do remember like when it came to Ironman Sunday, like once I was on that path, I didn't actually have to think for those sections because I had run that path so many times. I could tell you where every friggin' pothole or lump was in the dirt. And so that was an interesting part that like, and that's one of the second loop, that's one of the darkest places on that run course.
Literally darkest, like
Yeah,
lack of
we've
light
discussed
darkest.
like if when we spectate Ironman without people like a large group racing, like that is where we will be because there's no spectators out there. There's literally like the one volunteer at the turnaround point. But for me, I was like, my mind was
And it's kind of scary. Like I remember my second year
terrifying.
doing Ironman Wisconsin when it was the really rainy year. I could hear waves on the lake like crashing into the rocks, and then it's pitch dark and I'm running on this path and I can't like see anything. I'm like, I'm gonna be murdered out here.
Um,
I think though, just for interest of time, we should like tell the race day story
Yeah.
because that also there were like some for me there were like a few pivotal moments in that, like there's the getting ready and the anxiousness of getting ready. The thing about for us about doing Ironman Wisconsin is we all got to sleep in our own bed, which is a bonus.
mhm,
But Aaron drove me. You had Casey
mhm.
with you. Someday we'll have Casey on this podcast. Shout out Casey.
I can't wait to. She needs to tell her perspective of
Yeah, it
the
would have been
two.
great actually to have her
Yes,
for
here.
this episode
Mhm.
because she has
She's
like
a
her
large part of that day.
yes. But so, you get there, we all put our wetsuits on. There's everybody's there wishing you luck. Like all of that's wonderful, good. We go get in line, and I purposefully sought out this guy, Andy, who was he was coached by the same person that I was coached, and we swam together a lot. And like it was also his first Ironman. Went and found him. You were with me when we found him. But for me, that was like, this is any other Tuesday or like Wednesday or whatever day of the week we
Mhm.
swam on, right? Morning. Like, this is just like any other day. We're getting in the water. We're getting in together. I was like, I'm just going to get in and I'm going to follow his feet for as long as I can. He's just like, first of all, like a 6'5" guy and a much stronger swimmer than I am. So this was very much like, I'm just going to try to like
Hang on.
hang on. Especially in open water. In the pool, he and I could swim in the same lane, and it was like totally fine. But as soon as he was in open water, somehow he is miraculously one of those people who gets
just takes
faster
off.
outside. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, Ironman, we had like the whole plan. And the nice thing with Casey is like she's done Ironman twice. So she also too is like knows all of the little tidbits. So she stayed at my apartment the night before, drove me in. And I feel like I mentioned this in like my story. I slept beautifully the night before, which is like foreign before a race. Ate my food. I was not nervous. And it's just a very odd thing for me. Go back and listen to my actual stories about the second type of person I turn into when I get into the water. But I was just like, calm, we're doing this. The morning was beautiful. We go down, line up, get in the water, and just like start swimming. I don't feel like I had a ton of congestion. For a part of it, I think I swam inside the buoy line just because I was like, ugh, I don't want to be around these people. I stopped twice, mainly because I had to pee and I can't pee while I'm swimming. But it was like one of those moments that I do kind of appreciate it because it did give me a second to be like, wow, I'm doing this. Like, and I'm like enjoying it. So come out of the water. I am not a fast swimmer by any means, but came out of the water quicker than I think I had planned. So you run up the helix. It's like this magical moment too, because you've got all of your friends and teammates, but like for me, I had my family there who have never experienced like Ironman Sunday and all of it. And like they're sobbing, like, and you're just overjoyed because you're like, okay, we're doing this. Run up the helix. I run into transition. So Casey had swam the swim and waited for me in T1. So I had her and then one of our good friends, Pam, as my like people. So they like fully change you. And I was still like, okay, we're doing this. Head out on the bike.
It was kind of cold that morning.
Yeah, I wore arm warmers, which I like took off pretty quickly. But I very quickly on the bike was like, this is not going to be fun. And I could just tell with like the weather and how I was feeling and like looking down at my speed headed out on the stem that I was not going as fast as I wanted to or should have been going. But that's also very tricky to be in a bad mind space before you bike 112 miles. So biked into Mount Horeb the first time.
I think, well, just for me, like I got out of the water, changed. I put on a jacket before I left T1 because I was convinced I was going to be freezing. I headed out and within, I don't know, 4 miles, I was like, jacket might have been too much, but we're just going to go with it. Turned on to Irish, which is like the lane or the road that heads west out of Madison to the Ironman course. And I was like, oh shit, there's a headwind. And I had trained off of a power number with this coach, and he had given me a range that I needed to stay in. And as I'm going out, I was like, to stay in this range is not going to be possible. I was like, this isn't going to work out. If I stay in the range, I'm going to go way too slow. And so I would just like stop, like it was very quickly in the first 10 miles of the bike. I was like, well, I'm going to end up over biking this by power because of the wind. Like there's no choice. I'm not going to stay in the number and go 12 miles an hour. Like not happening. That was for me as I headed west. I was like calculating all of that. I don't know that I went to that instant dark place on the bike. I don't know that I actually went to a dark place on this particular. I'm fully capable of going to a dark place, but I don't think I went there on the Ironman loop the same way that you did. So.
You had a good bike.
Yeah.
Like Aaron and I were moving around the bike course, and there were several times we were like, she is moving faster than we expected, which was great. And every time you passed, you seemed like you were in a decent mood. So
yeah. I was totally, I didn't have any of those I can't do this moments on the bike. I had sort of markers in my head as I was heading out because I am a slow swimmer compared to most of the people that we had trained with. And so I had in my head, if you can get to Julia, if you can get to Kayla, if you can get to Robbie, if you can get to, right? So I had people in my mind that I was like, I'm chasing them and I'm going to go get to them and then I'm going to ride with them for a little while. And so I kind of had that happening in my brain.
Yeah. So I was not in a great place. And so, yeah, you climb into Mount Horeb and it's a pretty long climb where like people can run next to you and chat with you. And I remember like very quickly telling Casey, like, I don't think I can do this. And God love her. And she's like, nope, you're fine. Keep going. Like, also when like, I vividly remember being flipped the second year she did Ironman. And like, it's like, nope, you're okay. Just keep going. That's what you do. And so I just kept riding. I did, like looking back, there's a handful of things I would do differently. Like because I hated being on my bike so much, I think at aid stations, I like would stand up to like relieve just anything that was bugging me. I probably lollygagged a little too long. We could change that next time. But got into special needs, and our friend Megan was there, drank my Coke, refilled my bottles, and was just like, okay, just like, you don't have a choice. We're just going to keep going. What road is it as you're biking into Mount Horeb?
On 92?
92. I literally stopped biking and like was standing on the side of the road because the wind was just like murdering me. I was going so slow, and like I was doing the math where I was like, there's no way that I'm making this cutoff. Like I physically cannot do it. And like it was just like if you could have been the fly, like I'm standing there just like but we kept going. We got into Mount Horeb the second time. Once again, I'm like, there's no way this is happening. I'm just like fully defeated. And I know I still have. The thing with Ironman Wisconsin is like, you haven't even hit the hills of the hills when you're in Mount Horeb. Like, I'm like, I still have to climb these three. They are lovingly known as the three bitches. Like, so I'm just like, I still have to climb these. I climb Old Sock and Timber. I drink a Red Bull on the top of Timber. That was a very specific like thing I knew I needed. I did walk Midtown the second time. Our friend Nick was there, and it was one of those where I was like, I just need a moment off this bike. Like I hated that bike with every ounce of my insides. But then I knew like the top of Midtown, I knew the whole way in. Like the stem isn't delightful, but
It was a tailwind.
we did have a tailwind, and so I did fly on the way in. Like I just tucked in and I was like, get me off of this freaking bike. I get in.
Wait,
I was like-
before you transition to the run, let me tell the other
bike.
part of the bike story. So I make it through the first loop, slightly overbiked that sucker, and I come up the Mount Horeb Hill. Casey's there, the second loop, and I ask about Laura. How's Laura? Where's Laura? And Casey was like, not good, but she's still out there, or something like that, very like Casey. And I was like, okay, great. And I can't remember exactly like where I passed everyone, but I ended up passing Julia at one point. I ended up passing Kayla. I didn't get to talk to Kayla. I saw her, like I was biking by an aid station because I only stopped at one aid station in special needs for mine, because I'm not stopping unless I have to go to the bathroom or I have to like refill or something like that. That's like the only reasons why I'm stopping. So, and also like sometimes the aid stations would be like crowded with people, and that gives me the ick. And so I'm just like not doing that. So like I do finish my second loop. There is a section of the Ironman course. It's not long enough, of course, but it's like super flat, and it was a tailwind, and that was like stagecoach up to Old Sock. And I remember people had always told these stories about Ironman Wisconsin about like, you'll have so much support on the hills. Like everybody's on the hills. It'll be so great. It'll be so amazing. First loop, decent. Old Sock, not as much, but decent. Second loop, barely anybody's out there by the time I'm getting there. There's still a few people, but like I had in my mind that Old Sock would be full of people, and there were no people there. And I was like, actually, this is like where I would like somebody to like run next to me going up, because this hill just goes on and on and on and on and on forever. And there was nobody there. Timber at the top of Timber on the first loop, I took my jacket off and threw it at Aaron. But yeah, so
You kept that jacket on a while.
I kept it on probably longer than I needed to, but I was like, I didn't want to lose it. Like it was not a throwaway jacket. I started biking back to town, and the thing I specifically remember biking out, like heading out on the stem and seeing like the 100-mile mark for when you're coming back. And I remember out loud being like, I'll see you in a couple hours, to that road marker of 100. And then getting back to it on the way back and being like, you just have 12 miles left. Like, this is no big thing. Like, and the tailwind back into town on Wayland. The other thing that stood out to me on Wayland was there was a big crowd of our people standing on the hill on Wayland. And so that was like super meaningful. And then we had another group of friends all in flamingo costumes standing probably like 5 miles out on M. So like those were also like special bike moments for me. But it was super like, Like, I really hope that Unbound is not like insanely windy, but that direct west wind for that Ironman day was like super tough because that so much of that course is heading west.
Yeah.
So much of it was like direct headwind.
And I think like it was one of those I'm like, is it as windy as I think it is? Like, because you're also playing this game where it's like, do I just suck this badly? And then like you talk to everyone after and it's like, yeah, it was windy. And you're like, okay. Not that it helps, but
I remember that bit on Wayland for you, Holly. That I did not expect that many people to be there. That was also one of the moments where we were all like, wow, she's moving really well and faster than we were expecting. And you just like flew by and we were like, okay, I guess she's gonna go run now. She seems like she's doing great.
so I come in. Was your T2 like memorable to you?
Well, I didn't do a full clothes change in T2. I ran in my kit. And when I came into T2, there was like this older woman and I had like my flowers in my bag and I had like my shoes and whatever. And I'm like changing, putting on my hat, doing whatever. And like she wanted to talk to me about my shoelaces. And like I was just like, yeah, whatever. Like I just am like, can I just get out of here? So there wasn't like anything like crazy memorable about it other than this like conversation with the volunteer who was like, I've never seen shoelaces like that before. And I'm like,
these are like pretty textbook race laces.
Okay.
You're also like, this is not the moment.
Right.
Ask me in a few hours.
Yeah.
Well, mine was very different. I like come up to T2 and they catch your bike. And I literally was like, I don't want to see this thing again. I run in.
You literally said you can throw that away.
Yeah, I did. I did say that. So I run into T2 and one of our friends was there and she looks at me and she's like, so you have 2 minutes before they pull you. She's like, you just have to get through T2. And so they have my bag and we run across the timing mat so that I get through T2 before the cutoff time. And then they wrap the towel around me and I just change like right outside of T2 because you also can't have public nudity or you'll be disqualified. These lovely people are like, because I did a full change because I knew I wanted to be out of my kit, are helping me change. I change and which is just like you don't really care about a lot. You're like, okay, all of these people are seeing all of me, whatever. I also do that in my job, so I don't care. But I like take off running. And in my head this whole time, I'm like, if I can just get to the run, if I can just get my feet on the ground and get to the run, I don't really care. Like whatever can happen, I don't care. And so I like take off running and you like run out of the terrace and like go around a couple like turns. And then you take a left and like Casey's there. And she's just like, okay, here we go. And she just like jumps in next to me. Yes, this is against the rules to have somebody running next to you. We are aware.
She did have a bib. She had signed up to do this race.
Yes.
She just didn't do the bike. So she was wearing a bib.
Yes. But I am fully aware you are not supposed to have a pacer. I was not winning this race, people, at all. So she just like falls in next to me. And it was one of those where I'm like, okay, this is like literally every run we've done all summer. Like it's her and I next to each other running. I also had like this delusional time in my brain. I don't know what I had told myself that I had till like 1 a.m. I don't know where that came from. We're like running along and like we're pretty consistently running. Like we're not walking a ton. And it wasn't until
Wait, let me like catch up to mine.
Yeah,
before
let's
you tell
do
your end
Holly's
of the...
part.
I was like,
first.
I'm
Yeah.
not getting close. There's like a couple things before
No,
the end.
yeah, but before you get to like the end of the run. So there's a couple things about that. So like I get off the bike. I ask about you again I see somebody somewhere and I was like, is Laura off the bike? Right? Because I'm trying to get an update. Like, is she off the bike? Has she made it off the bike? Not yet, but she's close. Something like that. So I keep running. I'm like down on State Street. So Ironman slightly changed the course in 2024 from what it had been previously. So it no longer had observatory in it. You like ran into this neighborhood and then you end up like back behind some buildings on the
Over some
campus,
like
whatever.
path.
So, but I had not run the full thing because I was like, I don't care. There'll be signs. It's fine. You know, I run out. I do this first like weird trip behind all of the buildings and it's light out. And I know the next time I'm going to be behind all these buildings, it's going to be dark. And I kind of get very nervous. And I'm like, I don't want to be back here by myself in the dark. So I come out and you go back up State Street to the whatever that turnaround is. And I'm coming up and I had a friend who the 50K we supported a few weeks ago. He had told me, he's like, hey, if you like need someone to like be with you on part of the course, and again to the point of like you're not allowed to have a pacer. This wasn't about having a pacer. This was more about like making me feel safe than having somebody to pace me. He was like, let me know and I'll like run with you for a while. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to let him know unless he happens to be in the place that I need him to be at the time. But I end up running by Aaron, and Sarah and Larry were with him. And I just remember saying to him, where's Dave? And he's like, I don't know. I'll find him. And so, like, behind the scenes, there's this whole thing happening related to
we
finding
had like so
Dave.
many text groups.
Yeah.
Literally so many group chats being like, okay, this is what this person needs. This is what this person needs. You're going there. I'm going here. So we're like, okay, Dave needs to show up for Holly now.
I just keep running. And I'd done Camp Randall once at that point, whatever. I just keep running, and he showed back up outside of Camp Randall as I would think I was, whatever that is, into the second loop. No, is that right?
I feel like he was with you before,
I think he was with me before that.
but he can't go into
But he can't
Camp
go
Randall.
in Camp Randall.
Yeah.
But I feel like I had run one before whatever it was. It doesn't matter. Not the point. But yeah, so I think then we're kind of like caught up to the same, at least mile markers of the race.
I remember a very like pivotal point. You run up, is it State Street? There's like, you're on State Street twice, but there's like a part where you run up, there's like a up and back. And I was like, I had told like Casey, like that's a spot I want my family to be. And they weren't there. That was a bit defeating of like, and I think it was like more so I was in a good mind space still at that point and they weren't there. And so it was just like one of these like, okay, crap. And so then like you do this turnaround too and you're headed back out on the lakeshore path. And I think that wasn't one of the cutoffs. I don't remember.
Yeah, there is a cutoff.
But
That is
there
a
also
cutoff
too
point.
was like, also through this run, my watch died at mile 18 on the run. But I do remember very quickly where I'm like, these mile markers are not matching. My watch is going off and like the mile markers are like pretty substantially like still far
like a
away.
half a mile away, like far.
And so like there was a point too where I'm like, this run is freaking long, like longer than 26.2. And so there was, and I do remember like the part, I had so many conversations with myself of like, you have to make it to midnight. Then I had like the conversation where I was like, I don't actually care. Like if I finish, I've made it. And then it was like, okay, if you can make this time cutoff, up and down, every single emotion. I was like bargaining with myself of finishing this race. And God love Casey. She's just like next to me, like, okay, let's go. We got this. It's fine. It's fine. And I don't even remember where it was. I think you had finished already, but we had this realization that like I didn't have as much time left as I thought I did.
Wait, because Maggie's got to tell
Yeah,
part
so maybe
of that
let's
story.
do
So
let's do Holly's finish.
Yeah, so I like at some point I get an update that you are on the run and like
She's alive.
everything's fine. And I'm like, okay, great. I meet up with Dave. Dave and I run all of the scary stuff. I have him with me like on the like pitch black lakeshore path. We run up State Street. Nick and Angie are there like on bikes at one point as I'm running in the dark. I make it up to the top, but I remember on the lakeshore path that passing the mile marker that said 18, looking at my watch and being like, that's not right. But I immediately blamed my watch. I never thought for a second, like, oh, the course's markers are off. I was like, I think it must have been when I went into Camp Randall, like the GPS got jacked, right? Like that was like in my brain, what happened. It had to have been something somewhere, like the GPS got messed up. And that's why my watch isn't matching the mile markers. And because Dave had picked up to run with me kind of after I had already started, he didn't have like a concept either. Like, so I didn't really think about it. Nobody on the course, like volunteers or anything, were saying anything about that. I remember getting to the point where like I wanted chicken broth and Coke, and I had that. And then like I transitioned to like, now I was like eating grapes. Like there was like a few points in there where like I probably walked more than I actually needed to, but I was just like hitting that, like, I'm so tired. I've been out here such a long time. Like, what difference does it make if I walk 5 minutes or 3 minutes? Who cares? And Dave was being like very encouraging and like, you can do this and whatever. We're in the dark. I see Megan. I'd seen Megan also in special needs, but then I saw her like in this kind
She was
of
in
by
like the
her
dark behind the building area.
Yes, and she has her dog in like a cute costume and whatever. So I like stop and I hug Megan and like we keep going, and I come in. Dave sort of drops me we come up State Street the last time there. He kind of drops me and I run in and do the finish. My friend Kim Dursey, who's a first responder, was there and she stayed late to catch me, which was like super sweet of her. My parents were at the finish, which I didn't expect. Like I told them I was doing this race, but had made no plans or effort or anything to like coordinate anything with them. Trixie was there. Like there was like a lot of like very special moments at like when you finish an Ironman. Aaron was not where he was supposed to be though. So I did not get my like Ironman finish picture with him that I wanted because he went into VIP instead of like being where I thought he was going to be.
Also, there's just like a hilarious saga of Aaron missing Holly.
Yeah.
So that's just like the icing of that part.
Yeah. So anyway, finish the race. I like then post up to wait for Laura. And this is where I realize when I stop my watch and I'm talking to other people that the run course was long. And I was like, oh, they're out there and they might have clocked it in their brains that the run course is long. But if they're like me, they maybe don't realize it. Like that it's a full mile long. So we're doing the math. Other people from our group are finishing. You know, Julia finishes, Kayla finishes, Andy finishes behind me that we had started the swim with. A few other people had finished ahead of us, right? So like Catherine was done, Alexis was done. We're all kind of standing around and like doing the math, waiting for Robbie and Laura. Like
the announcer says something.
Well, we're not even there yet. I can't remember, Maggie, when we sent you out to get them.
It was after that.
So it was, yeah.
It
was the announcer.
But I text Casey at some point and was like, you're gonna have to go faster.
Yep.
Yeah. That was the other nice thing. Casey had her phone. So we had been texting Casey periodically throughout your run. And then, yeah, Holly texted Casey to say, you're going to have to go faster. The announcer said something about the cutoff time.
It was earlier than we thought it was. Right. It was like 12.
Right.
We all were thinking 1 a.m. for some reason.
I don't know.
And he said whatever it was.
No, we were thinking like 12:20 because it's supposed to be 17 hours after the last person enters the water. Mm-hmm. But then they were like, no, the cutoff is going to be earlier. So then I'm texting Casey. I'm like, does Laura need anything? Like, what can I do? You guys are going to have to go faster. And then I think I had said, do you want me to come out there?
I think
because
Casey,
also at that point,
Casey was realizing like she's also running a marathon, and she's like having this recognition where she's like, I don't have like the kick of an Ironman to get her, because like you climb up State Street and up around the Capitol. Like you've got some work to do before you finish this.
She was like, my heart rate is going to be jacked going up these hills, and like Laura's going to need to keep moving. So she was like, yeah, come out here. So I had been in Birkenstocks at that point. I'm like quickly throwing on my tennis shoes.
She's like,
Aaron
put
is
me
like
in, coach.
Aaron is like throwing nutrition at me. I don't know what he threw at me. I put it all in my pockets. And then I take off running, just like going backwards on the course. And I'm like, I will intercept them wherever I see them. And as I'm running, I'm sending voice memos to Nick, because Nick had texted me and he's like, where did everyone go? So I'm like, I'm running to go intercept Laura and Casey. And then I'm also telling him, because we had the bullhorn. So I'm like, if they don't fucking say, Laura Johns, you are an Ironman, someone needs to say it. Someone needs to get on the bullhorn and say it. So Nick is like, I'm ready. I've got it covered. I'm like, okay, perfect. So I think it was then near the surf that I met.
It was
you
by
guys.
like the police station around there. At this point too, I had like, it was like, it's so close. And I was like, I just want to run across the finish line. That's all. I don't care. I just want to run the red carpet, and I want to finish.
Well, we're all back at the finish line, and the announcer's like, if you're still out there, like, you better get here, and blah, 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 and like all of this. And like, I'm on one side of the finish line, and our friend Angie's on the other side of the finish line. We're just looking at each other, like, across the finish line. Like, there's nothing we can
Literally
do.
nothing you could do.
And we're just like, how far away is she? Refresh the tracker. How far away is she? Check Casey's location. How far away? No, just like, we're both like this. She's not going to make it. Like, what's going to happen?
Yeah. And so a very pivotal part and this is where I just like, I like love Maggie. So we're like running, and she's like got her phone, and if anyone is I love how Maggie runs, because she just bounces, and so she's just like and she's like, it's still 12:19. It's still 12:19. It's still 12:19, and we're just like running. And I don't remember when Casey stopped running with us, but like we run up State.
It was near State Street, because she was like, I can't do this.
And like we ran up State, and I think we walked a short part of like the Capitol side. Mm-hmm. And then Maggie was like, you have to run. Like, you don't have a choice. You have to run. And the very asshole thing that Ironman does for Wisconsin is you pass the finish line and do a hairpin turn, because why not? Why not add more mileage to this marathon? So I like make the hairpin, and the announcer is also
this is like literally the fastest I've ever seen you run. Like, you're moving at this point, which I'm like, thank goodness.
There's a tidbit about this too, where I'm like, hold on, I'll get there. So I like make the hairpin, and also why I'm so concerned at this point, I look at Maggie and I was like, you can't come in the chute with me. And she's like, I know. Okay, Laura. Really? And so
I was like, don't worry, I will leave you.
But I'm like very concerned now at this point, where I'm like, somebody can't be with me. Like, no. And so yeah, you turn the corner. It's silent in my brain. Like, I'm not even like recognizing anything that's happening. And I think I am running about a 5:30 mile, you guys. I looked back at the videos. I was not, but regardless. So yeah, I finish. I get called an Ironman.
It was insanely emotional for everyone who was there waiting, right? Because we're like, he's like, the announcer's literally like, if you're still out there, like, you got to get here now. Like, we're shutting it down after this one. And I think there's one person in front of you, and then you and maybe one person after you before they shut it down. The one person comes across, and the announcer keeps saying this about like, if you're still out there, and she comes around the corner, and I think the entire group started bawling.
Yep.
Like, I will cry now thinking about it. Like,
I just remember locking eyes with Aaron and I'm just sobbing
Yeah.
and he just nods at me and I'm like, yep.
And I talk about this in my like story. I would cry like the whole week leading up to Ironman. I would cry thinking about crossing the finish line. And I didn't, but I also think it was one of those where I was like, holy shit balls. What just happened?
yeah, I didn't cry for me crossing the finish line. I cried for you crossing the finish line. I will still cry for you crossing the finish line.
Yeah, and I just like I couldn't tell you who was where on the finish shoot because I was so beeline. I was like, I can't divert. That's a second.
Yeah.
Like, we finished it.
We finished it. Okay.
Yes, the run course is long, but you know what? It's all right.
The run course was a full mile long.
Full mile long. And like you like think about that when you're running an Ironman for the people at the back, like that's at least 10 minutes of time. Like
bare minimum.
10.
Probably at that point in an Ironman for
15.
like the party pace, it's 15 minutes of time.
That's just I think about any human being that was behind me, like that is probably a dozen people that like you think about where you're like, had that run course been an appropriate length. I will say, like, I do feel like I have unfinished business with the Ironman distance. That's why we're going to California next year.
I mean, that's not the
Hell
only.
yeah,
That's
baby.
not the only reason, but
I would love to like, because like I look back of like, I was in such a terrible place on the run. Like I didn't get to like hug anyone or like I was just like, nope, head down. There's only one goal. So
wrap up.
But anyway, so that's the whole Ironman
That's the
story.
saga.
It's gonna feel like we're cutting this short. We're not cutting it short. But Maggie, you want to wrap us out for today?
Okay, bye.